Is Starmer's new Minister for Women and Equality right for the job? He's appointed Annaliese Dodds, who's previously become tied up in knots over the legal definition of a woman. Have a listen to an interview that she did. This was back in 2022.
And Labour's definition of a woman?
Well, I have to say that there are different definitions legally around what a woman actually is. I mean, you look at the definition within the Equality Act, and I think it just says someone who is adult and female, I think, but then doesn't say how you define either of those things. I mean, obviously, that's then you've got the biological definition, legal definition, all this kind of thing.
With respect, I didn't ask for that. What's the Labour definition?
Well, I think with respect, Emma, I think it does depend what the context is, surely.
Well, author JK Rowling, a fierce advocate of the rights of biological women, doesn't appear to be thrilled about the appointment. She took to Twitter to say, naively, I thought it was our lawmakers' job to resolve complexities, not just add to the confusion. And Susan Hall, a former Tory London mayoral candidate, said, women need someone to defend their space, not someone who cannot even properly define them. Do you agree? Are you bothered that she is representing women? 0207 862 2222 is the number for your thoughts on this. Let us know how you feel. Nell, what do you think about this appointment?
I saw nothing wrong with what she said. She's making a determined effort to be inclusive, to be able to talk about the legal, biological, cultural differences between a man and a woman. There are many countries and cultures around the world that recognise a third gender, and it's been historically so, whether it's in Central America or in places like Pakistan and India. So I think having a grown-up and adult debate about this is about right. Her particular view that her particular views on what a woman is and what a woman isn't is incredibly relevant here. And this is kind of, I think, what's tripping up a lot of people. If she can't name a woman, then how can she possibly advocate for them? She can. Annaliese is a very smart, intelligent person, and she's going to do this job responsibly.
Carol, what do you think?
It terrifies me that this woman is going to be in charge of women's rights. Not only has she said publicly that, she said when she was asked to define a woman, she said depends on what context. She also said being a woman can mean all kinds of things. No, it can't. We have a Prime Minister who said it's wrong to say that women only ever have a cervix. Phillipson, the woman who is her boss, Bridget Phillipson, who is Annaliese Dodds' boss, she refused to say before the election whether women's spaces, safe spaces and toilets would be safe. Would a trans woman with a penis be allowed to go into a toilet? She was asked 8 times to answer that. She couldn't. You know, I just think, you know, people like her, people like Dodds, they're forever talking about the importance of diversity and inclusion, and yet people like her shout down and try to close down people who have a differing opinion. There is no law in this country that is about misgendering. There is no law that says we have to believe that a trans woman is a woman, and it frightens me.
But should there be?
No, it frightens me that she's talking about increasing penalties for what she calls trans hate crime. What about increasing the penalties for the hate crime against women like JK Rowling, against the women who speak out for women's safe spaces and women's rights? And the trans activist movement, well, for them, they refuse to acknowledge that there are competing rights here. It's not just all about trans rights, it's about women's rights. And the trans brigade will not acknowledge women's rights. They will not accept that women should have safe spaces that they till now have been their spaces. And it annoys me that we're all going to be forced into, you know, it is a ridiculous situation where all a man has to do in this country is to gender ID himself as a woman, and he has to be treated as a woman.
OK, well,
how can that be?
Is also going to be part of this conversation, in whether self-IDing, which Annaliese Dodds is very
Dodds is saying she wants to scrap the system that we have existing now, which says a panel of doctors and lawyers will give the gender recognition certificate or not. She wants to take that down to one family GP. I mean, to me, that's just totally irresponsible.
OK, well, now let's speak to Katy John Went. Katy, you're a writer and an activist and a trans woman yourself. What do you think about the new Women's Minister?
I I agree with both the comments already given, and I think she's got a poisoned chalice in the sense that she has to stand up for women and girls and for equality. And equality includes the Equality Act, it embraces the Gender Recognition Act, both kind of Labour policies that came before. And she's obviously been shadow in this role for a couple of years already. So she has got this poison chalice. How do you keep everyone happy? And the answer is you can't. I think actually Labour could have kind of advanced the causes here by actually being really radical with the largest number of women in Parliament, the largest number of women in Cabinet, actually had a Minister for Women and Girls and a Minister for Equalities, separate the two, and then have them fight it out in Cabinet and actually get two people advocating for two groups and then let them try and find the way to get beyond the so-called complexity to the simple actual complication of how do we coexist, how do we create a society in which trans people can get on with their lives and in which women and girls feel safe.
Well, that's an interesting concept.
Can I say to Katy, because I have enormous respect for you. I wish you were at the forefront of trans rights and not some of the people that we see who seem to alienate biological women and seem to not want to listen to their rights. And I wish there were more voices like yours out of there, because I think you're incredibly compelling and compulsive. But there aren't. And that's the problem with the trans activists.
But there are. But in the same way that when you ask people on the door, how are you going to vote? A lot of people who are going to vote, say, for example, this didn't happen this time round, but there used to be what they used to call the conservative shy voter, wouldn't admit, on the door or in polling that they are actually going to vote Tory, or in this case, perhaps Reform. Obviously, it didn't pan out that way this time. And, and I'm left leaning in the same way as JK Rowling describes herself as left leaning. But what I'm saying is, I think there are more kind of women's rights leaning trans people than are given the chance to have a voice. You've got two or three kind of big names who have taken totally lock, stock and barrel the gender critical position. But there are more people like me. It's just that we get abuse from both sides if we speak up. So there's a lot of us who are cowed into not speaking up. And then that means the transgender activists, the trans brigade, as you called them, and the lobby groups that act on their behalf become seen as the only voice. I've had messages this week from multiple other trans people saying, I'm really relieved by who's in Cabinet now, because it will continue to be the middle of the road muddle that goes forward. Yes, of course, we would all love to have clarity, but I don't think we're going to get it anytime soon.
Can I just put to you a question that actually Carol brought up earlier? It was a question that was posed to Bridget Phillipson, who is the other Women and Equalities Minister because of a legal quirk. But anyway, when Carol says that she refused to answer the question of whether a trans woman with a penis should gain access to a woman-only toilet or bathroom public space, I'm wondering whether you could answer that one for us, Katy, because I think actually when it comes down to the question of trans rights, I think for a lot of people it comes down to that moment, that question. What does that little icon in the front of that door stand for? Does it stand for gender or does it stand for biological sex?
It stands for peeing. I know I'm being facetious. I'm being facetious there somewhat. You occasionally see these stickers up that says basically, if you see someone in the toilet, assume they're in there to pee, and that's what they're there to do. People in there to do other things should be policed for the other things, not for necessarily gender or sex on the door. I keep saying this every now and then on interviews, but it's an absolute truth. My neighbour is Linda Bellos, and she gets misgendered about 5 times a day, she says, and gets challenged in toilets. I know and have plenty of female friends who get challenged as well. And I recognise that someone like me who doesn't change their voice but has transitioned surgically, and I don't think I'm a threat to women, but I understand going into a space such as that, some people would feel threatened by the presence of a male voice or someone who doesn't look overtly stereotypically
Can you understand,
female. I personally, because I'm disabled, use the disabled.
Can you understand, Katy, the case of the 5 nurses who are suing the NHS, who they said that they didn't want to get changed in front of a trans woman who had stopped taking the hormones because he wanted his wife to get pregnant. Now, you must be on the side of the nurses in that case, are you?
I am, in fact. But the thing is, I think one of the solutions that everyone is forgetting that could apply to everything from toilets to changing spaces to multiple other things is to go back to fights that have been going on for over 14 years. If you know the case of Christy Ellen Kane, who was supported by David Blunkett, which is the case for having X markers on passports, the third option. 17 countries, I think half a dozen in Europe, now have the possibility of an X marker on a passport. I know there are some trans people who object to it, thinking the idea that we have a conspiracy theory idea that if trans people go along with the X marker that many and some intersex people want, we will end up with a situation where it's easy to round us up. I'm not into that kind of, hey, it's all doom and gloom and the end of the world, and it marks us out as easy to be picked on. But what I think is actually recognizing, for example, when you look at the numbers of people who in the recent census said they were trans, irrespective of how the question was asked and whether the number is 50,000, 150,000 or 250,000, the interesting thing is the majority of the younger people who are trans identifying, the majority of them are neither identifying as male or female, but as non-binary. So if you've got something like 40% of the younger trans group identifying as non-binary, even the solutions that they're trying to keep going or keep pushing forward in government are not going to solve the issue for non-binary people. Toilets don't come in non-binary flavors, except the gender all-inclusive one that everyone's objecting to as well. I think we need to look at, instead of this binary solutions, we need to look at additive solutions rather than replacement solutions. Stop replacing language, stop replacing and force teaming people, and actually come up with third space solutions to at least take the bulk of the option into that space, offering secure, single, private, gender-neutral toilets in addition to disabled toilets, so you're not taking away from disabled access, but in addition to male and female, so that you're not just rendering the female toilet in a theatre suddenly the gender-neutral one, which is already the one with the longest queue anyway. I think there needs to be a third way, and I think we're not going to solve it by actually having one side against each other, which one's going to win, who's in power. It's just going to perpetuate the fight.
Do you not worry about the fact that that the Dodds seems to want to trash everything that Hilary Cass put down in her report? Now, young children are now going to be subject to the drugs that the Cass report banned. And you must know there's a massive detransitioning movement going on among young people now who made mistakes and they took drugs that have changed their lives irrevocably and affected their fertility. Are you not worried about people like Dodds doing that?
I wouldn't call it massive. I would say it has grown, and I have met enough detransitioners to know it is an issue. But it is still a single figure percentage issue of the whole. It's still the largest number of people who go through with trans claim to be happy. I say claim to be. I mean, I'm happy. But the point is, yes, I do have my concerns still, and I actually backed the Cass review and got a lot of ire from the trans community for doing so, because I think she was actually quite balanced. It's a bit like the BBC, shall we say. If enough people hate it and love it, you've probably got it right. Yes. In other words, you pissed off both sides equally. And Cass didn't go far enough for the gender critical side and went too far for the trans side. And absolutely, if you are a young teen who is questioning your gender, you're going to feel as though you've had all the options removed from you, and that is going to create a personal crisis. So what we need to do is actually have the government standing up and say, we are going to create health equality with mental health. We are actually going to plough millions into mental health to ensure there is that safety net for people going through this, because we know that they have complex comorbidities with other questions of, say, neurodiversity and dysphoria, dysmorphia, and eating disorders, and the whole range of questions of mental health there. And I do believe, actually, that puberty blockers should have been put on hold, and people will hate me for saying that from my side, if you want to call it a side, because, yes, it does. It's kind of, if you sign up to puberty blockers, it's basically 99.999% of people go ahead. In other words, it isn't a pause. It is like a foregone conclusion once you accept that. And even people who are transgender themselves, and actually surgeons, have said people taking puberty blockers actually rule themselves out from a number of other things, obviously fertility, but also the potential to even have a sexual life at all. Because if you don't go through a degree of your original birth puberty, you may not end up with even the ability to, have sexual pleasure, orgasm, etc.
I had no interest. You learn something new every day on this show. Katy, we've covered a lot of ground there. Stay with us, though, because I want to take some calls. We're going to speak to Leslie now from Flintshire. What do you think about the appointment of Annaliese Dodds?
Well, I find it a little bit odd because I work in a theatre environment in the NHS. We have to get changed from our outside clothes and into our scrubs, We have somebody, I can't name names, obviously, but we have somebody who's decided to call herself a female, and she's coming into our changing rooms, and it is flapping its genitals around while we're getting undressed. Now, that is a vulnerable position for any woman, and it's like women are being
Leslie, can I ask a question? I mean, that doesn't sound...
We're being taken out of the equation. Real women are being taken out of the equation.
I absolutely hear your concerns there. Can I ask, when you are changing from your outside clothes to your scrubs and back again, do you have to take your underwear off?
No, but you are...
So it does sound a little bit unusual.
Your bras and knickers.
Yeah. That wasn't really my point. Was, why is the other individual in there taking off their underwear when it isn't necessarily?
She didn't say that. She said you could see.
I thought she said...
She said flapping about.
And not only that, he's got a girlfriend.
Well, is a transgender individual, but transgender
transgender
women can have girlfriends too. I know, complicated it can get, but Katy, I really want to hear your perspective on this one, because I think when it comes to biological women, like everyone here on the panel actually, like Carol's will have similar concerns to the ones that Carol have aired, and this is the fear that Leslie's just described.
Well, this goes back to the recognition that the Equality Act has a duty to protect women and girls, and it has a duty to protect transitioning people. Those are the two categories that under law they're duty bound to protect. So apply the Equality Act and actually protect both the women and girls, well, obviously not girls in this theatre situation we're talking about, but protect the women in that situation and their right to dignity and privacy in that space to change comfortably with each other, and also protect the trans person. And that means not forcing them to actually change with the biological men in that sense either, because they're going to equally find that awkward. So actually find, again, the third solution. And if that means having to find a space away from theatre or to have them change in a different situation, then that's a solution that under law they have to come up with.
But hold on,
and
Katy,
so in other words, if there's a reason to do an exemption under the Equality Act, there is also the obligation to provide alternative provision as well.
Okay, your suggestion is bordering on far too common sense for this show. However, my question to you is, would that not other the individual that's transitioning? Because we don't necessarily want to do that in society either, do we?
So, well, this is the thing. Feelings don't need to be. It's nice to have your feelings protected, but feelings don't need to be protected. The law is about women and girls and transitioning people. And in that sense, it's someone being told, hey, we're going to find a third solution for you. That might feel like you're being singled out, but unfortunately, that is the nature of being trans. You can't get away from it. You are going to come across too many as other. The number of people say that, pass in a way that doesn't cause people concern because they have no clue that you're trans is a minority, although amongst trans men, people going from female to male, you're far more likely to pass and no one click
Katy,
or care or bother that you're male. And we never talk about the trans men. We always talk about the trans women in this situation.
Because there's more of them. But you just said there that we have to worry, Storm, not Katy, we have to worry about othering this person. Now, what about the women? Why is everybody worrying about the trans person? Can I just ask Leslie, are you from the hospital where these nurses are suing?
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought so. It sounded like it.
We have got problems with... we have got issues, and it's very uncomfortable because these men are just deciding that, today I'm going to be Jasmine. And I'm going to put a dress on. So they're going to come into the changing room, it's perversion.
Well,
it's not a perversion, but it is. You are right to want to get changed alone. And it was as soon as she said there that this person was trying to get their girlfriend pregnant, that I realised that was the same case. So it's not just the 5 nurses who are saying, it's still happening to other nurses in that situation.
So, but Leslie, can I ask, when you hear Katy's suggestion of finding another room for these individuals to get dressed in, would you be happy with that? Would that be a happy conclusion?
Where's the money going to come from to put Where's the money going to come from for there to put another changing room in? We've got a tiny little changing room as it is.
Well, Leslie, I mean, the hospital would have to find it, and if they can find it, I'm asking, would you be happy with that as a solution?
Well, it's away from the young, and we have got young girls. They're 20, 21. Yeah. And we look after our staff, and I don't mind anybody being transgender or whatever, but if you've got somebody who 1 minute is a man and then the next minute he decides to be...
Well, I mean, there's a non-binary situation there. Leslie, I absolutely hear your concerns completely. Thank you very much for your call and sharing your story with us. Thank you as well to Katy John Went for joining us in that conversation as well. We're going to have to move on. And I'm saying unfortunately because I would quite like to continue that conversation.